Three identical sisters vanished without a trace in the Grand Canyon's most treacherous terrain. But when one of them stumbled out of the wilderness 3 years later, her story about what happened in those hidden depths would challenge everything we thought we knew about the canyon's darkest secrets. The scream that echoed across the South Rim Visitor Center on March 15, 2012, came from a park ranger who had seen everything the Grand Canyon could throw at him. But nothing had prepared Ranger Dale Morrison for the sight of the young woman who had just walked out of the desert, her clothes torn and sun-bleached, her dark hair matted with dust, and her eyes holding the hollow stare of someone who had seen the impossible. She looked exactly like the missing person photos that had been taped to his office wall for 3 years. Identical to them, in fact, because Zara Blackwood was one of 3 triplets who had vanished into the canyon in 2009, and she was supposed to be dead. The Blackwood sisters had been inseparable since birth. Zara, Nora, and Kira were 19 years old when they decided to celebrate their college spring break with a hiking adventure through the Grand Canyon's backcountry. They were experienced hikers, raised in Colorado by parents who had taught them to respect the wilderness but never fear it. Their planned route was ambitious but well within their capabilities, a 5-day trek through some of the canyon's more remote trails, ending at a predetermined pickup point where their parents would be waiting. On March 18, 2009, when the sisters failed to appear at the rendezvous point, their parents immediately contacted park authorities. The initial search was massive, involving helicopters, ground teams, and some of the most experienced search and rescue specialists in the country. For 2 weeks, teams scoured every inch of the sisters' planned route and expanded far beyond it. They found nothing. No gear, no footprints, no sign that 3 young women had ever walked those trails. It was as if they had simply evaporated into the desert air. The case became one of the Grand Canyon's most baffling disappearances. The sisters had been carrying GPS devices, emergency beacons, and enough supplies for their planned journey. They were smart, prepared, and experienced. The complete absence of any trace was unprecedented in the park's history. After months of searching, the case was reluctantly classified as a presumed fatality, though the bodies were never found. Now, 3 years later, Zara Blackwood stood in the visitor center, very much alive, but fundamentally changed. The medical examination revealed that she was severely malnourished and dehydrated, with injuries consistent with prolonged exposure to harsh conditions. But what disturbed the medical staff most was her mental state. She spoke in fragments, often staring off into the distance as if seeing something that wasn't there. When asked about her sisters, her eyes would fill with tears, but she would only whisper, "They're still down there. They're waiting." Dr. Amanda Cross, a psychiatrist specializing in trauma cases, was brought in to evaluate Zara. The young woman's story, when she could be coaxed to tell it, was fragmented and often contradictory. She spoke of underground chambers that shouldn't exist, of sounds that came from deep within the earth, and of her sisters being taken somewhere she couldn't follow. Most disturbing of all, she insisted that only days had passed since their disappearance, not 3 years. The investigation into Zara's reappearance was led by Detective Ray Hutchins, a man who had worked missing person cases throughout the Southwest for over 2 decades. He had seen people emerge from the wilderness after being lost for weeks, even months, but never after 3 years. And never in Zara's condition. Her clothes, while weathered, were not deteriorated enough for 3 years of exposure. Her injuries were consistent with recent trauma, not prolonged survival in the desert. If you're finding this story as incredible as we are, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more mysterious disappearances that defy explanation. The breakthrough came when Zara, during one of her more lucid moments, mentioned a specific location. She described a hidden entrance near Hermit's Rest, concealed behind a rockfall that looked natural but wasn't. She drew crude maps on napkins, showing passages that led deep underground, far below the known cave systems of the canyon. Her descriptions were so detailed and specific that Detective Hutchins decided to investigate, despite the apparent impossibility of her claims. The search team that ventured to Zara's described location found exactly what she had drawn. Hidden behind what appeared to be a natural rockfall was an opening, barely wide enough for a person to squeeze through. The rocks that concealed it had been carefully arranged to look like the result of natural erosion, but closer examination revealed tool marks and evidence of deliberate construction. Someone had gone to great lengths to hide this entrance, and they had done it recently. The passage beyond the hidden entrance descended steeply into the earth, following a route that didn't appear on any geological survey of the area. The walls showed signs of both natural formation and artificial modification, as if someone had taken advantage of existing cave systems and expanded them for their own purposes. Most unsettling of all, the passage showed clear signs of recent use. Footprints in the dust, some matching the boots Zara was wearing when she emerged. As the search team descended deeper into the hidden passages, they began to understand that Zara's story, however impossible it seemed, might be true. The Grand Canyon was hiding something beneath its ancient layers of rock, something that had been deliberately concealed from the outside world. And somewhere in those dark passages, two young women might still be waiting for rescue. The descent into the hidden passage revealed a world that shouldn't exist beneath the Grand Canyon. The search team, led by Detective Hutchins and accompanied by cave rescue specialists, found themselves in a network of tunnels that defied every geological survey ever conducted of the area. The passages were too uniform, too precisely carved to be entirely natural. Someone had spent considerable time and effort expanding these caves into something far more complex and purposeful. 300 feet below the surface, the team discovered the first evidence that Zara's story might be true. In a small chamber off the main passage, they found a makeshift camp. 3 sleeping bags, arranged in a triangle, with personal items scattered around them. A Colorado State University student ID belonging to Zara Blackwood lay half-buried in the dust. A water bottle with Kira's name written in permanent marker sat empty against the cave wall. The camp looked recently abandoned, as if its occupants had left in a hurry. Dr. Sarah Chen, a geologist who had joined the search team, was baffled by what she was seeing. The cave system extended far deeper than any known formation in the area, and the construction showed a level of sophistication that suggested long-term planning. These modifications weren't done by casual explorers, she told Detective Hutchins as they examined tool marks on the walls. Someone has been working down here for years, maybe decades. This is a deliberate construction project. The team pressed deeper, following a main passage that seemed to spiral downward in a carefully engineered descent. The air remained surprisingly fresh, suggesting a ventilation system that wasn't immediately apparent. Emergency lighting had been strung along portions of the tunnel, powered by generators whose distant humming echoed through the passages. Someone was maintaining this place, keeping it operational for reasons that became more sinister with each discovery. In a larger chamber nearly 500 feet below ground, they found evidence of recent habitation on a much larger scale. The space had been converted into a crude but functional living area, with sleeping quarters, a kitchen area, and what appeared to be a workshop filled with mining equipment. Maps of the Grand Canyon covered one wall, marked with dozens of locations and connected by red lines that formed a complex web across the canyon's geography. Most disturbing of all, photographs of young hikers were pinned to another wall, including several pictures of the Blackwood sisters taken with a telephoto lens before their disappearance. Detective Hutchins felt his blood run cold as he examined the surveillance photos. The sisters had been watched, studied, and targeted long before they ever set foot on their planned hiking route. This wasn't a random disappearance or a case of hikers getting lost. It was a carefully planned abduction, carried out by someone who knew the canyon's hidden secrets and had the resources to exploit them. The workshop contained equipment that explained how such an extensive underground operation could remain hidden. Industrial-grade drilling equipment, explosives for controlled blasting, and sophisticated ventilation systems were all present. But most telling were the documents scattered across a makeshift desk. Geological surveys, mining permits that had been denied by the National Park Service, and correspondence with various government agencies dating back over a decade. Someone had been trying to gain legal access to mine beneath the Grand Canyon and had been repeatedly denied. So they had decided to do it illegally, in secret, using the vast underground spaces to hide their operation. The team discovered that the cave system connected to at least 6 different surface entrances scattered across the canyon, all carefully concealed and accessible only to someone who knew exactly where to look. It was a network that could allow people to move unseen across vast distances, emerging at predetermined points to conduct surveillance or abduct unsuspecting hikers who might stumble upon their operation. As they ventured deeper into the complex, the search team began to hear sounds that didn't belong in a natural cave system. The distant rumble of machinery, the echo of voices, and most chilling of all, what sounded like someone crying. The sounds were coming from even deeper in the complex, from passages that descended further into the earth than their current equipment could safely explore. Don't forget to like this video if you're as shocked by these discoveries as we were, and subscribe to stay updated on this incredible investigation. Dr. Chen's geological analysis revealed something that made the situation even more disturbing. The cave system wasn't just being used for hiding, it was being actively expanded. Core samples from the walls showed recent drilling, and the mineral composition of the rock dust suggested that whoever was operating down here was searching for something specific. The geological formations at this depth contained traces of rare earth minerals, elements that were extremely valuable and tightly controlled by federal regulations. The realization hit Detective Hutchins like a physical blow. This wasn't just about hiding from authorities or conducting illegal mining. The people operating this underground complex were using kidnapped hikers as forced labor, exploiting their knowledge of the wilderness to help expand and maintain the operation, while keeping them hidden from the outside world. The Blackwood sisters hadn't just stumbled upon this place. They had been specifically targeted because of their hiking expertise and their planned route through remote areas of the canyon. The evidence suggested that Zara had somehow escaped from deeper in the complex, but her fragmented mental state indicated that her sisters were still being held somewhere in the lower levels. The crying sounds the team had heard were likely coming from other victims, people who had disappeared over the years and been presumed dead, but who were actually being held in this underground prison. As the search team prepared to descend deeper into the complex, they made one more disturbing discovery. A communication system had been set up in the main chamber, with radio equipment capable of monitoring Park Service frequencies. The people running this operation had been listening to search and rescue communications for years, always staying one step ahead of any official investigation. They knew when searches were being conducted, which areas were being examined, and how to avoid detection. The scope of the operation was staggering. What had started as an investigation into one woman's impossible return from the dead had uncovered a criminal enterprise that had been operating beneath one of America's most famous landmarks for over a decade. And somewhere in the depths of this hidden world, Nora and Kira Blackwood were waiting for rescue, along with an unknown number of other victims who had vanished into the canyon over the years. The deeper the search team descended, the more sophisticated the underground operation became. At nearly 800 feet below the surface, they discovered what could only be described as an underground city. The passages opened into a vast, natural cavern that had been extensively modified, with multiple levels connected by metal staircases and walkways. Industrial lighting illuminated work areas where heavy machinery operated around the clock, extracting valuable minerals from the canyon's hidden depths. But it was the living quarters that revealed the true horror of what they had uncovered. Dozens of small cells had been carved into the cavern walls, each barely large enough for a person to lie down. Most were empty, but several contained evidence of recent occupation. Personal belongings, makeshift bedding, and crude calendars scratched into the stone walls told the story of people who had been held here for extended periods. Detective Hutchins found himself staring at one particular cell where the name Nora had been carved deep into the rock, along with what appeared to be a countdown of days. The marks suggested she had been keeping track of time for over 2 years before the scratches abruptly stopped. In another cell, Kira was written in smaller letters, surrounded by what looked like mathematical equations and geological diagrams. Even in captivity, the sisters had been using their education to try to understand their situation. The search team's radios crackled with an urgent message from the surface. Park rangers had discovered 2 more hidden entrances to the cave system, and both showed signs of recent activity. Vehicles had been spotted leaving the area just hours before, suggesting that the people running this operation had been alerted to the search and were evacuating. The realization that they might be too late sent a wave of urgency through the team. In the main work area of the underground complex, they found evidence of the operation's true scope. Computer terminals displayed geological surveys of the entire Grand Canyon region, with detailed maps showing mineral deposits and extraction points. Financial records indicated that the illegal mining operation had been generating millions of dollars in revenue, selling rare earth elements to overseas buyers who didn't ask questions about their origin. Most disturbing were the personnel files they discovered. Detailed dossiers on dozens of hikers who had disappeared in the canyon over the past 15 years, complete with photographs, background information, and assessments of their potential usefulness to the operation. The Blackwood sisters had been specifically targeted because of their geology education and their physical fitness. Other victims had been chosen for their engineering skills, their knowledge of explosives, or simply their ability to perform manual labor in the harsh underground environment. Dr. Chen's analysis of the mining equipment revealed that the operation had been extracting lithium, cobalt, and other rare earth minerals that were essential for modern electronics and renewable energy technology. The illegal mine was potentially worth hundreds of millions of dollars, providing more than enough motivation for the elaborate kidnapping and forced labor scheme. The team discovered a control room where surveillance monitors showed feeds from cameras positioned throughout the canyon's popular hiking trails. The operation had been watching and selecting victims for years, using the vast network of hidden passages to move undetected and strike when hikers were most vulnerable. The level of planning and organization suggested that this wasn't the work of a few desperate criminals, but a sophisticated criminal enterprise with significant resources and connections. As they searched deeper into the complex, the team began to find signs of a hasty evacuation. Equipment had been abandoned mid-operation. Computers were still running and personal belongings were scattered as if people had left in a panic. But there was no sign of the current victims, including Nora and Zara Blackwood. If you're as disturbed by this underground criminal empire as we are, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you don't miss the shocking conclusion to this story. The breakthrough came when they discovered a transportation tunnel that led to a hidden loading dock carved into the canyon wall. Tire tracks in the dust showed that vehicles had recently used this route to transport people and equipment out of the complex. The tunnel emerged behind a carefully camouflaged entrance that was invisible from the canyon floor, but provided direct access to a network of service roads used by park maintenance crews. The realization that the criminals had escaped with their victims sent Detective Hutchins into overdrive. Radio calls went out to law enforcement agencies across the Southwest, setting up roadblocks and alerting airports and border crossings. But the head start the criminals had gained by monitoring Park Service communications meant they could be anywhere by now. The manhunt that followed the discovery of the underground complex became one of the largest multi-agency operations in Southwest history. FBI agents, U.S. Marshals, and local law enforcement agencies across 4 states coordinated their efforts to track down the escaped criminals and their victims. The investigation revealed that the operation had tentacles reaching far beyond the Grand Canyon, with connections to illegal mining operations in Nevada, Utah, and New Mexico. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Zara Blackwood, despite her fragmented mental state, began to remember more details about her captivity as she received medical treatment and psychological counseling. During one of her sessions with Dr. Cross, she mentioned a name she had overheard during her time underground, Marcus Thorne. The name meant nothing to the local investigators, but when FBI databases were searched, it revealed a connection that sent shockwaves through the investigation. Marcus Thorne was a former mining engineer who had worked for several major corporations before starting his own consulting firm in the early 2000s. His legitimate business had failed after he was caught falsifying environmental impact reports, and he had disappeared from public view around 2005. What made his involvement even more sinister was his background in geological engineering and his known expertise in underground construction projects. Financial records seized from the underground complex revealed that Thorne had been the mastermind behind the entire operation. Bank accounts in offshore havens showed millions of dollars in transactions dating back over a decade, with payments to equipment suppliers, corrupt officials, and what appeared to be a network of accomplices who helped identify and abduct victims. The scope of the criminal enterprise was staggering, involving dozens of people across multiple states. The investigation also uncovered the method by which victims had been selected and abducted. Thorne's organization had placed operatives in key positions throughout the Southwest's outdoor recreation industry. Employees at gear shops, trail guides, and even some Park Service contractors had been feeding information about hikers' plans to the criminal network. The Blackwood sisters had been targeted after purchasing specialized geological equipment at a Denver outdoor store, where an employee had noted their planned destination and hiking experience. Zara's memories, though still fragmented, provided crucial details about the underground facility's layout and the people who ran it. She described a hierarchy among the captors, with Thorne at the top and several lieutenants who managed different aspects of the operation. Most importantly, she remembered overhearing conversations about a secondary facility where valuable prisoners were taken when the main complex became too risky to operate. The secondary facility was located through painstaking analysis of the financial records and communication intercepts. FBI agents traced a series of property purchases and equipment deliveries to a remote ranch in southeastern Utah, approximately 200 miles from the Grand Canyon. The property had been purchased through a shell company linked to Thorne's organization and had been extensively modified with underground structures that didn't appear on any official building permits. The raid on the Utah facility was conducted at dawn on March 22, 2012, exactly 1 week after Zara's emergence from the canyon. FBI tactical teams surrounded the property, while helicopters provided aerial support. The ranch appeared abandoned from the surface, but thermal imaging revealed heat signatures from underground structures that confirmed the presence of people below ground. The rescue operation that followed was both triumphant and heartbreaking. In the underground levels of the ranch, agents discovered 12 people who had been reported missing over the past 8 years. Among them were Nora and Zara Blackwood, alive but severely traumatized by their 3 years in captivity. The sisters had been forced to use their geological knowledge to help expand the mining operations, working in conditions that amounted to slavery. The reunion between the 3 sisters was captured by news cameras and became one of the most emotional moments in the case's resolution. Nora and Zara had believed Zara was dead, having been told by their captors that she had died trying to escape. Zara's actual escape had been covered up to prevent the other prisoners from attempting their own breakouts. Marcus Thorne and 6 of his key associates were arrested at the Utah facility, caught in the act of preparing to relocate their operation to Mexico. Evidence seized during the raid revealed plans for an even larger underground mining complex south of the border, where they could operate without fear of U.S. law enforcement interference. The psychological impact on the rescued victims was severe. All had been held in isolation for extended periods, forced to work in dangerous conditions, and subjected to psychological manipulation designed to break their will to escape. Many required months of intensive therapy to begin processing their experiences and reintegrating into normal life. Please like this video and subscribe if you want to see how this incredible story concludes and what happened to the criminal masterminds behind this underground empire. The investigation into the full scope of Thorne's criminal network continued for months after the rescue. Financial analysts traced money flows that revealed the operation had generated over $50 million in illegal profits, making it one of the most lucrative criminal enterprises ever discovered in the American Southwest. The trial of Marcus Thorne and his criminal organization became a media sensation that captivated the nation for months. The prosecution presented evidence of a criminal enterprise so elaborate and ruthless that it challenged everything people thought they knew about safety in America's national parks. Thorne, facing charges of kidnapping, forced labor, environmental crimes, and racketeering, showed no remorse throughout the proceedings, maintaining that his operation was simply an innovative approach to resource extraction that the government had unfairly restricted. The testimony of the rescued victims painted a horrifying picture of life in the underground facilities. Zara Blackwood, speaking publicly for the first time since her rescue, described how prisoners were forced to work 12-hour shifts in dangerous mining conditions, with inadequate safety equipment and constant threats of violence for those who refused to cooperate. The psychological manipulation was systematic and cruel, with captors telling prisoners that their families had given up searching for them, and that cooperation was their only chance of survival. Zara Blackwood's testimony revealed the sophisticated methods used to break down prisoners' resistance. She described how Thorne personally interviewed each new captive, using detailed background research to exploit their fears and vulnerabilities. Prisoners with technical skills were given slightly better treatment in exchange for their cooperation, while those who resisted were subjected to solitary confinement in cells barely large enough to stand in. The investigation uncovered evidence that the criminal network had been responsible for at least 37 disappearances across the Southwest over a 15-year period. Some victims had been released after serving their purpose, but were too traumatized or threatened to report their experiences. Others had died in mining accidents or from the harsh conditions, their bodies disposed of in the deep shafts of the underground complex. Dr. Amanda Cross, who had treated all three Blackwood sisters, testified about the long-term psychological impact of their ordeal. Zara's escape had been possible only because of a cave-in that had damaged part of the facility's security system, allowing her to slip away during the confusion. Her 3-year journey to the surface had been a nightmare of survival in unmapped cave systems, living on underground water sources and whatever small creatures she could catch. The geological evidence presented during the trial revealed the true environmental devastation caused by the illegal mining operation. Dr. Sarah Chen testified that the underground excavations had destabilized large sections of the canyon's geological structure, creating the risk of catastrophic collapses that could affect the surface landscape for decades to come. The National Park Service estimated that restoring the damaged areas would cost over $100 million and take years to complete. The financial investigation revealed that Thorne's operation had been funded by a network of international investors who were willing to pay premium prices for rare earth minerals, with no questions asked about their origin. The illegal mining had been supplying materials for electronics manufacturing, renewable energy projects, and military applications, with the profits flowing through a complex web of offshore accounts and shell companies. Marcus Thorne was ultimately sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, while his key associates received sentences ranging from 25 to 40 years. The judge, in delivering the sentence, called the operation one of the most callous and systematic criminal enterprises in American history, noting that the defendants had shown a complete disregard for human life and environmental protection. The Blackwood sisters faced a long road to recovery, but their story became a symbol of resilience and survival against impossible odds. Zara's 3-year journey through the underground cave systems was later studied by survival experts and cave rescue specialists, who marveled at her ability to navigate unmapped passages and survive on minimal resources. Her escape had not only saved her own life, but had ultimately led to the rescue of 11 other victims and the dismantling of a criminal network that had operated with impunity for over a decade. The case led to significant changes in how missing person investigations are conducted in national parks. New protocols were established for tracking hiking permits and monitoring remote areas, while advanced ground-penetrating radar systems were deployed to detect unauthorized underground activities. The National Park Service also implemented new training programs for rangers to recognize signs of organized criminal activity in wilderness areas. If this incredible story of survival and justice has amazed you as much as it has us, please hit that like button and subscribe for more unbelievable true stories that will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about the world around us. The Grand Canyon complex was permanently sealed after extensive documentation by federal investigators, but the case served as a stark reminder that even in America's most protected wilderness areas, criminal organizations could operate sophisticated operations hidden from public view. The Blackwood sisters' ordeal had exposed a dark reality that challenged the perception of national parks as safe havens for outdoor enthusiasts. Today, the three sisters continue their recovery, having used their experience to become advocates for missing person cases and wilderness safety. Their story stands as a testament to the power of human resilience and the importance of never giving up hope, even in the face of seemingly impossible circumstances.